400 hours, northern entrance of the Luzon Strait. The ocean is a churning void of black water. Heavy swells crash against the steel hull of the lead U.S. destroyer. The ship cuts through the waves with a rhythmic groaning shudder. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air is cold and smells of recirculated ozone.
All stations.
Green light bathes the faces of exhausted sailors hunched over glowing consoles.
Locking on Sierra.
The silence is heavy, broken only by the hum of cooling fans and the distant thrum of the engines. Rain lashes against the bridge windows, blurring the horizon into an impenetrable wall of darkness. A sonar operator stiffens. He presses his headset tighter against his ears. A faint metallic scraping sound filters through the hydrophones. On the surface search radar, a ghost appears. It is not a fishing vessel. It is massive. It is running dark, without navigation lights, cutting directly across the destroyer's bow. The proximity alarm blares, shattering the quiet. The collision alarm screams. Sailors grab overhead railings and brace against bulkheads. The bow of the U.S. destroyer plows into the flank of the enemy frigate. Steel shrieks. Sparks shower the dark water like fireworks, illuminating the terrified faces of crewmen on the enemy deck. The impact throws the U.S. bridge crew across the compartment. Monitors smash against the floor. The hull of the enemy ship buckles inward, ripping open like a tin can. Seawater rushes into the breach with a roar. The ships remain locked together, grinding against each other in the rough swell. This is not modern over-the-horizon warfare. It is a brutal street fight. The destroyer's forward deck gun swivels. It depresses to minimum elevation. The barrel roars. A 5-inch shell slams into the enemy bridge at point-blank range. The explosion obliterates the superstructure. Fire engulfs the enemy deck, turning the night into day. Enemy sailors scramble onto the burning deck. They man heavy machine guns mounted on the railings. Tracers zip through the night air, hammering against the destroyer's plating. Bullets shatter searchlights and ping off the radar mast. A U.S. gunner takes a round to the shoulder and falls. Another Marine steps over him, racks the bolt of a heavy machine gun, and unleashes a torrent of lead. The rounds tear through the enemy personnel, spraying blood across the white hull. Bodies crumple and slide into the dark water. The enemy ship launches a torpedo from a deck tube. It arms instantly. The explosion rocks both vessels violently. A massive geyser of water and debris erupts between the hulls. The shockwave knocks the captain of the U.S. destroyer into the command console. Blood trickles down his forehead. Smoke begins to fill the bridge. The captain wipes the blood from his eyes. He screams for full reverse to disengage. He orders the close-in weapon system to target the exposed missile racks on the enemy's stern. He does not wait for a damage report. The rotary cannon spins up. It sounds like tearing canvas. Thousands of tungsten rounds shred the enemy missile launchers. Secondary explosions ripple down the length of the frigate. A massive fireball consumes the enemy vessel. The heat is intense enough to blister paint on the U.S. ship. The ammunition cooks off, sending jagged shrapnel flying in all directions. The U.S. destroyer groans as the engines pull it free from the burning wreckage. Metal screeches one last time. The enemy frigate lists heavily to port. It is dying. The bow dips beneath the waves. Burning oil spreads across the swells, creating a lake of fire. The U.S. crew scrambles to seal hull breaches and extinguish fires on their own deck. The water is lit by the orange glow of the inferno, revealing the wreckage of the blockade force drifting in the current. 0530 hours, 20 miles south of the initial engagement zone. The horizon turns a bruised purple as dawn approaches. Thick black smoke from the earlier battle drifts low over the water, mixing with the morning mist. The U.S. picket ships sit motionless, their crews scanning the gloom. The ocean is eerily flat. A low buzzing sound begins. It starts like a distant chainsaw and grows into a deafening drone. On the bridge of a frigate, a lookout raises his binoculars. The sky to the north is not empty. It vibrates with motion. The radar screen blooms. It creates a solid wall of red light. Hundreds of contacts appear instantly. They are small, fast, and closing rapidly. The swarm arrives. Hundreds of suicide drones dive from the clouds like angry wasps. Below them, dozens of fast attack craft bounce over the waves, their bows lifting high out of the water. They leave white wakes that crisscross the dark ocean. The fleet's defense grid activates automatically. Rotary cannons spin up with a mechanical scream. They spit continuous streams of tracers into the sky. The noise is constant, a tearing sound that vibrates through the deck plates. Drones explode in midair, showering the sea with burning plastic and metal. But there are too many. A drone breaks through the wall of lead. It slams into the bridge wing of the lead frigate. The explosion shreds the steel plating. Glass shatters inward, spraying the helm crew with razor-sharp shards. An officer falls, clutching his face. Blood pools on the non-slip deck. On the water, the fast attack craft close the distance. They weave erratically to dodge heavy machine gun fire. Men in the small boats stand up and fire rocket-propelled grenades. The warheads streak across the water and detonate against the gray hulls of the U.S. ships. Black scorch marks mar the paint. Shrapnel clatters across the decks like hail. A U.S. gunner on the starboard rail screams for more ammo. He grips the handles of his heavy machine gun. The barrel glows a dull cherry red. He does not stop firing. The recoil shakes his entire body. He walks his fire into an approaching boat. The heavy rounds chew through the fiberglass hull. The boat disintegrates. The fuel tank ignites, sending a fireball rolling across the surface. The crew is thrown into the air, their bodies ragdolling into the sea. Another drone dives vertically. It aims for the smokestack of a destroyer. The close-in weapon system tracks it. The robotic turret jerks upward. It fires a short, violent burst. The drone detonates 20 feet above the deck. The shockwave knocks 3 sailors off their feet. They slide across the wet steel, slamming into the railing. The tactical action officer on the destroyer yells into the handset. He orders the 5-inch deck guns to switch to airburst fragmentation shells. He demands flank speed to create wind over the deck. The ship lurches forward, churning the water white. The main guns fire. The concussions thump against the chests of the crew. Shells explode in the air ahead of the swarm, creating a curtain of deadly shrapnel. Dozens of drones fly into the cloud and drop from the sky, their wings sheared off. The attack boats press closer. One gets within 50 yards. A sailor on the U.S. ship leans over the rail with an assault rifle. He fires rapidly into the open cockpit of the boat. The enemy pilot slumps over the wheel. The boat veers sharply, capsizing in the destroyer's wake. It tumbles, tossing its crew into the churning propellers of the massive warship. The buzzing begins to fade. The sky clears of targets. The last boat retreats into the smoke, trailing black fumes. The silence returns, but it is heavy. The decks are littered with smoking brass casings. Fire suppression teams rush to douse flames on the superstructure. A medic kneels beside a wounded lookout, applying a tourniquet to a shredded leg. The smell of burnt gunpowder and seared metal hangs thick in the humid air. The sun breaks the horizon, revealing scarred ships and a sea covered in floating debris. 700 hours, 30,000 feet above the Baton's Islands. The sky is a piercing, endless blue. Sunlight glints off the gold-tinted canopy of the lead U.S. stealth fighter. Below, the islands look like scattered emeralds in a vast turquoise sea. The cockpit is silent save for the rhythmic hiss of the pilot's oxygen regulator. Vapor trails stretch out behind the 4-ship formation like white ribbons. The world feels frozen in the thin, cold air. It is beautiful and deadly. A digital chirp breaks the calm. The radar warning receiver flashes red. The long-range sensors detect multiple heat signatures rising fast from the north. They are not cruising, they are climbing on afterburners. The pilot checks his display. The enemy formation is huge. The flight lead slams the throttle forward. The engine roars. He banks hard right to break the formation. "Fox 3!" he shouts into the mask. A medium-range air-to-air missile drops from the internal bay. The rocket motor ignites with a blinding flash. It streaks away, leaving a thick smoke trail that splits the sky. The enemy interceptors merge with the U.S. flight. The closure rate is over 1,000 miles per hour. The shockwave shakes the airframe. A U.S. wingman fires a heat seeker at a passing bandit. The missile hunts the enemy exhaust. The enemy pilot deploys flares. Burning magnesium balls scatter like glitter. The missile is fooled. It detonates harmlessly in the clouds. The lead enemy jet pulls a violent maneuver. It stalls mid-air, spinning vertically to face the U.S. fighter. Cannon fire erupts. 30-meter shells rip through the air. They stitch holes in the U.S. fighter's left wing. Composite material shreds and flies off in chunks. Fuel sprays out, instantly vaporizing into a white mist in the slipstream. The U.S. pilot grunts under 9 Gs. His flight suit squeezes his legs to keep blood in his brain. His vision tunnels. He fights the stick. He aligns the gun sight. He squeezes the trigger. The rotary cannon in the wing root vibrates the entire airframe. The rounds impact the enemy fuselage. The enemy engine explodes. Turbine blades fly out like shrapnel, slicing through the tail section. The enemy jet rolls inverted and disintegrates. A fireball blooms, orange and black against the blue sky. Another enemy missile tracks the damaged U.S. fighter. The warning tone becomes a solid scream. The pilot yells, "Eject!" The canopy blows off with a loud bang. A rocket-propelled seat shoots him out of the dying plane. The fighter explodes seconds later. The shockwave buffets the pilot as he tumbles through the air. The squadron commander orders the remaining flight to dive toward the deck. He calls for support to clear the airspace. The surviving enemy jets turn back north, low on fuel and ammunition. The sky is scarred with twisting smoke trails. Aluminum debris rains down toward the ocean miles below, splashing into the waves. A single white parachute drifts slowly downward, a tiny speck against the vast Pacific. The wind howls through the empty sky. 0915 hours, deep channel, Luzon Strait, 500 feet below the surface. The ocean here is a crushing void of black water and immense pressure. Inside the pressure hull of the U.S. attack submarine, the air is cold and thin. Red tactical lighting bathes the control room in a bloody glow. Condensation drips from overhead pipes onto the steel deck plates. The crew moves with deliberate silence. They wear soft-soled shoes to dampen sound. The only noise is the faint rhythmic hum of the cooling pumps and the steady drip of water. The sonar supervisor leans forward, pressing his headphones tight against his skull. He stares at the waterfall display. Green lines cascade down the screen. He points to a cluster of heavy contacts. A massive screw signature churns the water above. It is the enemy cruiser formation. They are running fast and loud, unaware of the predator beneath them. The captain grips the railing of the periscope stand. He checks the firing solution one last time. He orders tubes 1 through 4 flooded. The boat shudders slightly as water fills the launch tubes. The pressure equalizes. He gives the command to fire. Compressed air screams. 4 heavy torpedoes eject from the bow. They race through the deep water, their propellers spinning up to maximum speed. They trail thin guidance wires that connect them to the submarine. On the surface, the enemy cruiser cuts through the swells. Suddenly, white water erupts amidships. The first torpedo impacts below the waterline. The explosion is tectonic. It lifts the 10,000-ton warship bodily out of the water. The steel keel snaps with a sound like a gunshot that echoes for miles. The ship crashes back down, broken in two. A massive column of water and debris shoots hundreds of feet into the air. The second torpedo slams into the stern. It detonates the ship's aviation fuel storage. Helicopters parked on the deck are tossed into the sea like toys. Sailors are blown over the railings by the shockwave. The ocean rushes into the breached hull, dragging the massive ship down rapidly. The enemy destroyers react instantly. They turn sharply, their sonar domes pinging frantically. They bracket the area. Anti-submarine rockets fire from their decks, splashing into the water in a grid pattern. Depth charges sink rapidly toward the submarine. The first depth charge detonates. The shock wave slams into the U.S. submarine. The hull groans violently under the stress. It sounds like a sledgehammer hitting a metal trash can. In the control room, a high-pressure pipe bursts. Freezing seawater sprays across the tactical plot like a fire hose. The con officer is thrown from his station, slamming into the bulkhead. Sparks shower from an overloaded circuit panel, filling the air with acrid smoke. The captain yells for emergency deep. He orders a decoy deployed. The submarine banks hard to port, diving past its test depth. The hull plates screech as the pressure mounts. Bolts pop from the overhead piping, shooting across the room like bullets. The decoy ejects and begins to emit loud acoustic noise. An enemy torpedo locks onto it. The explosion rocks the submarine again, but from a distance. The U.S. boat slips beneath a thermal layer, vanishing from the enemy sensors. On the surface, the ocean is calm again. The cruiser is gone. Only a massive, spreading oil slick and debris field mark the grave. The enemy destroyers circle uselessly, dropping explosives into empty water. 1100 hours, Philippine Sea, center of the U.S. carrier strike group. The sun beats down on the gray, non-skid flight deck of the aircraft carrier. Heat haze shimmers above the asphalt, distorting the horizon. Yellow-shirted flight deck crews signal a fighter jet to the catapult shuttle. The engines roar against the jet blast deflector, shaking the deck plates. Below in the combat direction center, the air is freezing. The hum of electronics is steady. The tactical plot is clean. A technician at the ballistic missile defense console stands up. His chair crashes backward. He points to the main screen. Multiple tracks appear at the very top edge of the radar limit. They are not planes. They are falling from space. They are traveling at Mach 10. The alarm klaxon sounds, a distinct, terrifying wail that signals imminent impact. The Admiral grabs the handset. He authorizes free fire for all escorts. He orders the carrier to turn hard to starboard. The ocean around the carrier erupts. The vertical launch cells on 3 escort destroyers blow their hatches open simultaneously. Columns of fire shoot upward. Dozens of heavy interceptor missiles streak into the sky, trailing thick white smoke. They race to meet the incoming warheads in the upper atmosphere. High above, the sky flashes. Silent white spheres of light expand rapidly, where kinetic kill vehicles collide with ballistic warheads. It looks like a constellation of new stars born in daylight. Burning debris rains down from the stratosphere, splashing into the ocean miles away. One warhead survives. It breaks through the outer defensive layer. It glows white-hot from atmospheric friction. It dives vertically toward a heavy cruiser on the carrier's flank. The cruiser's radar locks on. The close-in weapon systems swivel instantly. The rotary cannon screams, spitting thousands of tungsten rounds at the falling meteor. The rounds spark off the warhead's casing, but the momentum is too great. The missile slams into the cruiser's superstructure. The impact is absolute. There is no explosion at first, just the sound of 10,000 tons of steel screaming. The kinetic energy shears the ship's bridge cleanly off the hull. It flies into the sea. Then the warhead detonates. A massive fireball engulfs the forward section of the ship. The blast wave hits the aircraft carrier a mile away, knocking flight deck crew flat. A parked fighter jet slides sideways, its landing gear collapsing. On the cruiser, the devastation is total. The forward turret is gone. A crater 3 decks deep smokes in the center of the ship. Sailors stumble out of hatched doorways, their uniforms blackened. Fire hoses snake across the deck as damage control teams rush into the inferno. The ship lists 10 degrees to port. The carrier continues its turn. It does not stop. The surviving escorts close the formation, filling the gap left by the burning cruiser. The catapult officer on the carrier flight deck stands up, wipes soot from his goggles, and signals the next jet. The steam catapult fires. The fighter jet shoots off the bow, climbing over the smoking ruin of the escort ship. 13:45 hours, 10 miles off the coast of a fortified enemy island. The flight deck of the U.S. assault ship is a chaotic ballet of heat and noise. The tropical sun beats down on the black, non-skid surface, baking the air to a shimmer. Dozens of heavy tilt-rotor transports sit in rows, their massive prop rotors spinning in a deafening blur. The wash from the engines flattens the flight suits of the deck crew. Marines in full combat gear line up at the rear ramps. Their faces are smeared with green and black camouflage paint. They check their weapons one last time. The smell of burning jet fuel is overpowering. The launch officer drops his hand. The first wave of tilt rotors lifts heavily into the air. The engines scream as they rotate forward. The formation accelerates, dropping low over the turquoise water to stay under radar. They skim the wave tops, kicking up a white mist of salt spray. The island looms ahead. It is a wall of green jungle and gray rock. Flashes of light sparkle from the ridgeline. The enemy air defense grid wakes up. Tracers arc out from the tree line, lazily at first, then thickening into a deadly net. Black puffs of flak appear in the sky around the transports. Shrapnel clatters against the composite hulls like gravel. The lead pilot yells a warning. A shoulder-fired missile smokes out of the jungle canopy. It corkscrews toward the formation. The transport flares. Bright magnesium decoys pop from the tail. The missile veers off and detonates harmlessly over the water. The formation flares hard over the landing zone. The back ramps drop before the wheels touch the tall grass. The crew chiefs scream, "Go, go, go!" Marines sprint down the ramps. They fan out instantly into the chest-high grass. Enemy machine gun fire erupts from a bunker complex on the hill. Bullets snap through the air. Dirt kicks up in angry spurts around the boots of the running soldiers. A Marine takes a round to the chest plate. The impact knocks him backward. A Navy corpsman grabs his drag handle and pulls him behind a termite mound. The squad leader slams a fresh magazine into his rifle. He points toward the bunker. He yells for suppression. 3 automatic riflemen open up. Their weapons chatter violently, chewing up the vegetation around the enemy slit. 2 U.S. attack helicopters sweep in from the flank. They look like predatory insects. The pilots align their nose cannons. They unleash a torrent of 30mm explosive rounds. The ground around the enemy bunker churns. Trees shatter. The attack helicopters fire a salvo of rockets. The warheads slam into the concrete pillbox. The explosion is deafening. Concrete dust and broken timber shoot into the air. The enemy fire slackens. The squad leader signals the advance. Marines rise and rush forward. They throw smoke grenades. Thick white clouds billow out, masking their movement. A combat engineer runs to the remains of the bunker. He throws a satchel charge into the firing port. He dives for cover. The charge detonates. The ground shakes. Black smoke pours from the bunker vents. The enemy gun falls silent. The tilt rotors lift off, their rotor wash flattening the grass one last time. They turn back toward the fleet for the second wave. On the ground, the Marines secure the perimeter. They set up defensive positions in the smoking craters. The jungle is quiet for a moment, save for the moans of the wounded and the crackle of burning wood. 15:30 hours, interior jungle slopes of the island. The air is thick, stagnant, and smells of rotting vegetation and cordite. Sunlight barely penetrates the dense triple canopy overhead, casting the forest floor in a sickly green twilight. Sweat drapes over the Marines like a second skin, mixing with the grime on their faces. The only sounds are the distant rumble of naval gunfire and the frantic buzzing of insects. Suddenly, a twig snaps. A hidden enemy trench line erupts with fire. Muzzle flashes flicker from the darkness beneath massive mahogany roots. The first rank of the U.S. squad is cut down instantly. 2 Marines fall, their bodies jerking as high-velocity rounds shred their tactical vests. The squad leader dives into the mud, screaming for the base of fire to set up. The jungle becomes a chaotic hell of noise and flying wood splinters. Marines crawl through the thick undergrowth, dragging their wounded by their webbing. They cannot see the enemy, they only fire at the flashes. An automatic rifleman props his weapon on a fallen log and unleashes a continuous belt. The heavy rounds chew through the ferns and soft bark, stripping the jungle bare in seconds. An enemy soldier leaps from a spider hole, clutching a satchel charge. A Marine corporal reacts instantly. He swings his rifle and fires a 3-round burst. The enemy soldier is slammed backward, blood spraying against the broad leaves of a palm tree. The satchel charge detonates prematurely. The explosion is a wall of orange flame that vaporizes the undergrowth and collapses a section of the enemy trench. The squad leader yells for the flamethrower team. 2 Marines crouch run forward, one carrying the heavy fuel tanks. The operator aims the nozzle at a reinforced log bunker. He squeezes the lever. A roaring stream of liquid fire shoots forth, curving through the trees. It splashes against the bunker entrance and flows inside. The screams from the bunker are high-pitched and brief. Thick, greasy black smoke boils out of the slit. The smell of burning fuel and seared flesh fills the air. Enemy soldiers scramble out of the side exits, their uniforms engulfed in flames. They are cut down by U.S. marksmen before they can move 10 feet. The Marines press the assault. They move from tree to tree, throwing fragmentation grenades into every hole they find. The concussions are sharp, bone-shaking thumps that rattle the lungs. Dirt and bits of enemy equipment rain down. A Marine sergeant reaches the lip of the main trench. He leans over and empties his sidearm into the darkness below. The fighting becomes hand-to-hand in the narrow, muddy ditches. A Marine struggles with an enemy officer, both rolling in the muck. The Marine reaches for his combat knife and drives it home. He gasps for air, his lungs burning. The resistance on the slope breaks. The surviving enemy forces retreat deeper into the limestone caves at the island's core. The Marines collapse against the trench walls, chests heaving, their uniforms soaked in mud and blood. Medics move among them, tearing open field dressings and stabbing morphine into thighs. The jungle is silent again, but the ground is no longer green. It is charred black and stained red. 1,700 hours, high altitude over the northern Luzon Strait. The sun hangs low, a bloated orange sphere bleeding into the horizon. At 40,000 feet, the air is a freezing, thin ether. 3 strategic heavy bombers soar in a tight wedge formation. Their massive, dark gray wingspans cast long shadows over the clouds below. The cockpit is a temple of focused calm, filled with the steady hum of 4 massive turbofans and the rhythmic clicking of flight computers. The pilots look like astronauts in their pressurized suits, their eyes fixed on the digital bombing solution. The payload bay doors groan as they cycle open. The internal rotary launchers begin to turn with a heavy hydraulic whine. The bombardier confirms the coordinates. He presses the release. A dozen long-range cruise missiles drop from the belly of each aircraft. They tumble for a fraction of a second before their stubby wings flick out and their turbojets ignite. They look like a swarm of silver darts as they dive toward the ocean, accelerating to subsonic speeds. Below, the enemy's primary naval logistics hub is a sprawling complex of concrete piers, fuel bladders, and ammunition depots. It is crowded with supply ships and damaged frigates. The missiles skim the wave tops, following the terrain to avoid detection. The first missile slams into a massive fuel storage tank. The explosion is a colossal dome of white-hot light. Millions of gallons of refined jet fuel ignite instantly. A mushroom cloud of oily black smoke roars upward, reaching thousands of feet into the air. The shockwave travels across the water, shattering the windows of every building on the coast. It hits the docked supply ships, snapping mooring lines like thread. Seconds later, more missiles impact. One strikes an ammunition pier. The secondary explosions are apocalyptic. Thousands of tons of naval shells and anti-ship missiles cook off in a chain reaction. Massive chunks of concrete and steel beams are hurled into the sky. A docked destroyer is lifted by the force of the blast and slammed onto its side. Its hull plates buckle and snap. Sailors on the shore are incinerated where they stand. Those further away are hurled through the air like dolls. The harbor water begins to boil as burning chemicals spill into the basin. The air is filled with a deafening, continuous roar of fire and collapsing steel. The heavy bombers bank away in a slow, graceful turn. They do not look back. Behind them, the horizon is no longer orange from the sun. It is a hellish, artificial noon created by the burning remains of the enemy's lifeline. The logistics hub is gone, replaced by a crater of fire that can be seen from space. 1900 hours, central Luzon Strait. Night falls like a heavy curtain, plunging the sea into an ink-black abyss. The moon is hidden behind thick sulfurous clouds of smoke drifting from the burning logistics hub. The ocean is no longer water. It is a graveyard of floating wreckage and slick oil. On the bridge of a U.S. destroyer, the crew works by the dim red glow of emergency battle lanterns. The main radar mast is bent, spinning with a rhythmic metallic screech. Every man wears a flash hood and gloves, their faces grimed with salt and soot. The tactical net is a cacophony of panicked whispers and static. Without satellite links, the ships are blind, hunting each other with ancient infrared sensors and naked eyes. A flare streaks into the sky. It hangs on a parachute, bathing the sea in a ghostly, flickering magnesium light. 2 miles to the starboard, an enemy destroyer emerges from the gloom. It is battered, its forward superstructure a blackened skeleton, but its guns are still manned. The two ships look at each other across the waves like prehistoric monsters. The enemy ship fires first. The muzzle flash is a blinding orange strobe. The shell whistles through the air and slams into the U.S. destroyer's midships. The impact is a physical hammer blow. Steel plating peels back like wet cardboard. The explosion rips through the galley and berthing spaces. Fire erupts, fed by broken hydraulic lines. The U.S. captain screams the order to return fire. Direct lay, point blank! The forward 5-inch turret swivels with a mechanical growl. It fires. The concussion blows the hats off the bridge crew and shatters the remaining glass in the windows. The shell strikes the enemy ship's waterline. A massive geyser of sparks and debris erupts. The enemy vessel shudders and begins to list. The engagement devolves into a frantic exchange of fire. Machine guns on the railings chatter, tracers crisscrossing the narrow gap between the ships. Bullets spark off the turrets. Sailors on both decks are mowed down, their blood mixing with the seawater washing over the scuppers. A U.S. torpedo boat screams out from the shadow of the destroyer. It bounces over the swells, its engines roaring. It launches 2 fish. The wakes are white streaks in the black water. They impact the enemy destroyer's stern. The explosion is a muffled deep-sea thump, followed by a violent eruption of fire. The enemy ship's propellers are blown clear of the hull. The vessel loses all power. It sits dead in the water, a burning target. The U.S. destroyer does not stop. It passes the dying enemy ship at 20 knots, its secondary guns still raking the enemy deck. The heat from the burning wreck is a physical wall that singes the hair of the U.S. lookouts. As the U.S. ship slips back into the darkness, the enemy destroyer's magazine detonates. A white-hot pillar of fire stabs upward, momentarily illuminating miles of empty, wreckage-strewn ocean. Then the light vanishes. The only sound left is the hiss of the cold sea extinguishing the hot metal and the low, distant moaning of the wind. 2100 hours, the central corridor of the Luzon Strait. The violence has bled out into a heavy, suffocating stillness. A thick, low-hanging fog rolls over the water, smelling of burnt plastic, sulfur, and salt. The surface of the sea is no longer blue or black. It is a shimmering, iridescent sheet of spilled oil and hydraulic fluid. Thousands of pieces of white insulation, orange life vests, and splintered wood drift in the slow current. The moon finally breaks through the smoke, casting a cold, silver light over the graveyard of the 2 most powerful navies on Earth. The U.S. flagship, a massive aircraft carrier, sits dead in the water. Its flight deck is a jagged landscape of twisted catapult tracks and charred aircraft remains. Smoke still curls lazily from a massive blackened hole near the bow. On the hangar deck below, red emergency lights pulse like a failing heartbeat. Sailors move in slow motion, their faces gray with exhaustion and shock. They carry stretchers in a grim, silent procession toward the makeshift infirmary. The only sound is the rhythmic clank of a loose steel plate hitting the hull and the distant, mournful whistle of a signal flare. To the north, the silhouette of an enemy cruiser remains visible, a jagged mountain of steel resting on its side. Its bow points toward the stars, frozen in the moment of its final plunge. There are no more explosions, no more roars of jet engines, and no more screams of incoming missiles. The silence is absolute and terrifying. In the water, a lone life raft bobbing in the swells contains a mix of survivors. They do not look at each other with hatred. They simply stare at the horizon with hollow eyes. One sailor tries to wash the oil from his face, but only smears the black grease further into his skin. A medic on the carrier's deck leans over the railing, looking at the water. He drops a spent roll of bandages. It floats away on a sea of debris. The admiral stands on the shattered bridge of the flagship. He does not look at the tactical screens. They are all dark. He looks through a cracked window at the burning hulks of his fleet. Beside him, a radio officer frantically adjusts dials, but only static fills the room. The entire strait is a dead zone. The direct consequences are visible in every direction. $2 billion of hardware sinks every hour. The water is choked with the bodies of young men and the ruins of global ambitions. The strategic objectives have been replaced by a singular, desperate struggle for survival against the rising tide. The tide begins to turn, pulling the wreckage out toward the open Pacific. The fire on a distant destroyer finally reaches the waterline and goes out with a long, final hiss. The Luzon Strait is clear of combatants, but it is no longer a passage. It is a monument of twisted metal and cold, oily water,